the empire that vanished in a day, the untold story of the Kingdom of Benin. They arrived before dawn. By sunset, a 500-year-old kingdom would be gone. Its palaces ablaze, its bronze treasures looted, and its history buried beneath the ashes of colonial conquest. But this was no ordinary kingdom. It had no Eiffel Tower, no Roman Colosseum. Yet what stood here rivaled them all, in beauty, in brilliance, in blood. This is the true story of the Kingdom of Benin, not the country, but the empire, a forgotten African civilization so advanced, so powerful, that when the British saw it, they couldn't believe Africans had built it, so they destroyed it, and what they left behind still haunts the museums of Europe. Long before the name Nigeria existed, long before British boots touched African soil, there stood the Kingdom of Benin in the dense green heart of West Africa. Founded over 1,000 years ago, Benin was no tribal backwater. It was an organized state ruled by an Oba, a divine king, and guarded by elite warriors and spiritual laws. At its height, it was one of the most sophisticated kingdoms in the world. The city of Benin was a marvel. European visitors in the 15th century were stunned by its wide, straight streets, its massive walls, its administrative order. Some compared it to Lisbon, others to Amsterdam, but what left them speechless were the bronzes, exquisite plaques, intricately cast statues, life-sized heads of kings, queens, warriors, each piece telling a story in metal, not primitive, not crude, masterpieces, created using a technique called the lost wax method, centuries before Europeans mastered it themselves. This was a civilization that recorded its history not in books, but in bronze. Benin traded with the Portuguese, then the Dutch, and eventually the British. Ivory, palm oil, and pepper flowed out. Guns and alcohol flowed in. But as Europe's thirst for empire grew, trade turned into ambition. By the late 1800s, the British Empire wanted more than commerce. It wanted control. The British demanded access. They wanted to open up Benin to free trade, by force if necessary. Oba Ovonramwen, the king of Benin, resisted. He knew what free trade really meant: colonization, loss of sovereignty, destruction of culture. So he closed his kingdom's gates. And that's when they came. In January 1897, a British delegation set out for Benin, allegedly on a diplomatic mission. But it was no ordinary convoy. It was armed and suspiciously timed, arriving during the sacred Ego festival, when the Oba was forbidden by tradition to engage in politics. The people of Benin saw it for what it was: a provocation. A confrontation broke out. Several British officers were killed. Back in London, the press called it a massacre. The British government called it a casus belli, a reason for war. And so in February 1897, they launched the Benin Punitive Expedition. It was anything but a battle. It was a slaughter. Over 1,200 British troops armed with Maxim guns and artillery marched into Benin. The defenders had spears, Dane guns, courage. They were no match. Palaces were burned, sacred groves desecrated. The Oba's wives were assaulted, priests were executed, and the Oba himself was captured. But before they left, they took something else: thousands of bronzes, pulled from palace walls, ripped from ancestral shrines, crated, cataloged, shipped. They called it spoils. The world calls it plunder. Within weeks, the Kingdom of Benin was gone. The Oba was exiled to Calabar. He died in obscurity. The city's walls, once described as longer than the Great Wall of China, were dismantled. Its culture smeared as savage, its artistry claimed by those who destroyed it. Today, the Benin bronzes sit in museums across Europe. The British Museum, the Louvre, the Berlin Ethnological Museum, labeled as gifts or acquisitions, rarely with the truth that they were stolen. But this is not just a story of loss. It is a story of survival. Because despite the destruction, the spirit of Benin endured. The descendants of Oba Ovonramwen still reign in Benin City, symbolic now, but proud. The knowledge of bronze casting never died. It passed from father to son, hidden during colonial rule, revived after independence, and the demand for justice has only grown louder. Today, after over a century of silence, museums are beginning, slowly, to return the bronzes. Germany pledged hundreds. Some have already arrived in Nigeria. Others remain locked behind glass, behind silence, behind history written by the conquerors. But the truth cannot stay buried forever. The Kingdom of Benin was not a myth. It was not a tribal village. It was an empire, sophisticated, literate, artistic, and African. Its destruction was not inevitable. It was deliberate, and its memory still smolders beneath the surface, because empires rise, empires fall, but culture, real culture, survives in fire, in exile, in bronze, and one day the bronzes will all come home. And when they do, the world will remember not the empire that stole, but a kingdom that shone.